Hi Living It Out team, welcome to the video that I am trying to do for each of the Living It Outs now so that we can stay in our lanes. This is one of the ways that I have tried to describe this new way that we're doing the Living It Out is it's like we're driving on a highway. I think I might have mentioned this to you in an email, and there are 5 of us in 5 different cars driving right next to each other, and so we each have a lane and we need to stay there. So what I'm going to do is give you a little bit of an overview and then talk about each day. So I think it's valuable for you to hear all of it so that you know where you're fitting in for the time that you're writing and serving this week. So from a big picture standpoint, I just wanted to point out, number one, we obviously have told the story of the younger son. And so this week, we're really telling the story of what happens upon his return. So this is all about the Father. And while we can tell the story of the Father's lavish love and his forgiveness and grace, we really want to unpack it beyond that. So not every single day can tell that big, broad story. Every day is going to tell a portion of that. And we'll get to that when we look at each of the days. The other thing to keep in mind is that we'll be talking about the gifts that are given, the robe, the ring, the royal feast. There's sandals thrown in there, just kind of a nod to that in the verses. Ben won't spend a lot of time on that this weekend. So we'll be looking at those 3 things, and is really how the outline and living it out is built for this week. So looking at your outline, I'm hoping that you can actually pull this up, because remember, the series is about you matter. So each of these things really need to tie to how does God show us that we matter, because he gave these things and we matter because of him. And then he also provides these gifts. They are in the story as what the Father gives to the Son, but it also shows what God gives each of us. You'll notice I'm going to do the weekend recap, so no need to worry about that. If you're writing Monday, this is really going to be retelling the story from the earlier verses. I'm going to continue to look at the outline here myself, and you will really unpack where have we been. Luke 15 verses 11 through 20. What do we already know? And then be able to pivot to how shocking it is that the Father does all of these things when the Son returns. I put in here that the tension is this shocking love, grace, and forgiveness. So Monday, you get to tell sort of the overarching story here, a review, get into what the story is for this week, and most of your context will be done in that intro. Then on Tuesday, we'll look at the robe. You'll notice that the big point there is the Son was welcomed back to the family without shame. And the way that the robe is given from Father to Son is just how God has robed us in righteousness. You'll notice there that I have, like, your lane is really telling the story of why the robe was significant. What did it mean culturally? But then also, what does it mean to him, or us, I should say, spiritually now? And this tie-in with shame is really key as well, that the robe of righteousness allows us to not live in shame, and yet so many of us carry that around. You'll notice that I included a devotional there from Brian Houston. He talks a lot about how we're not equipped to carry shame, and so you can use that as a resource and then get into the verses. One thing to note is that the verses really will be not just from Luke. They will be on Monday, but then we'll be pulling in what the main point is for each day through other verses. So for example, 2 Corinthians 5:17 is the verse for Tuesday. Remember that your intro should be about, I think it's 15 lines total, and it needs to include context. So you will want to set up that 2 Corinthians to tie in with this robe and righteousness piece. On Wednesday, your lane is really the ring. We're throwing in the sandals too a little bit here just to give it a nod, but you will be talking about the significance of the ring. What did that mean when the Father gave it to the Son? And then what does it mean for us? There's several resources listed here to give you a sense of that. And the other piece about the ring that you'll get into is spiritual gifts. Because we have been given these things, this not only the great affection, but also this authority. So the ring sort of is about delegating authority, and God does that God does that for us through spiritual gifts now. So you'll want to dive into that a bit. Again, there's some additional resources there for you to look at. I would like us to have a little bit of space in Live to talk about the spiritual gifts assessment. But the other part of spiritual gifts is that a lot of people know what they are, but they don't necessarily understand how to apply them. So I'm going to put a few reminders there for you, or some potential questions that you could ask for that day to help people drill down into not just knowing what they are, but understanding what that means. So that is Wednesday for the ring. Your lane is the ring and spiritual gifts. Then Thursday is about the royal feast. This is a life of abundance. And really the tension here is God gives us all these things, and yet we tend to walk away. We don't really accept those gifts freely and richly. And again, you're answering the question of how does the royal feast show that you matter? So I may have put that question in a few places and answered it, and other places I'm just reminding you that that's another place that you can come and land. In terms of the royal feast, you'll notice the resources that I included there will be in an attachment. Both Nowen and Keller talk about this, so please use those resources. If you don't, I'm afraid that you'll come out of that lane of the royal feast and start just talking about God's lavish forgiveness and love, which is a great story, but it's already been told on Monday and Tuesday. So stay in the royal feast lane. Then Friday really pulls back out and revisits the idea of the prodigal God, that it's because of the Father that you matter. And this, it will get further into the tension of being able to accept all of these gifts. Thursday, you might touch on it a little bit. Your resources are so deep that you might not. So on Friday, we're going to come back to that. And this keeping our focus on the Father, that when we focus on Him, we can get clarity on the calling. And so that means that when we're robed in righteousness, when we have been given a ring that delegates authority through spiritual gifts, and that there's been a feast prepared for us to live in abundance now and in the future, those are the places where we can say, this is why you matter, because of God first, and then these other three things that He shows us. Again, each of the days have different verses, not just Luke, so context shouldn't be an issue of crossing over there. And I think that's it. Did I have anything else? Okay, I think that's it. So thank you. I hope this video helps. Stay in your lane. Use the resources that I've given you. Give me a shout out if you're not sure sort of where to land, or if you're confused about anything. I'm available to help. And thank you so much. I really mean it when I say our best for His glory. And I look forward to what He's going to do through us. Talk to you soon.